Hello, my name is Skylar.
And my name is Tyler. I pay respect to the wandering people of the Kulin Nation where Dad's podcast is recorded.
I live on Bunjil land. I believe Bunjil is the creator of land of our first peoples. He is the creator of the land of where I am right now.
I pay my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Hello and welcome to Over the Rainbow, a podcast series dedicated to all things rainbow dads. I am Murray, I am your host, and this week we are discussing donor dad. You've heard the term, or maybe not, and you're probably wondering, what does a donor dad truly mean? Well, this week I'm speaking with Anthony, who tells me about becoming a donor dad and what that looked like for him. Anthony goes deep into helping me understand the term and what a donor dad truly looks like. For anyone that is thinking of this path or curious to know more, honestly, this chat is for you. Before we begin though, I want to read out you Anthony's bio. Anthony Leckis is a family violence consultant, trainer, relationship counsellor, and accredited mental health social worker. His work spans over 2 decades of working with the LGBTI and mainstream not-for-profit community health and private practice. Anthony is an advocate for the Bi+ community and is the founder of Melbourne Bisexual Network, as well as the co-creator of one of Joy FM's only radio programs dedicated to the Bi+ people, Triple Bypass. He is also a proud dad in his own right, and when he's not busy with work, caring for others in his daily work life, playing with his boys, he is talking to me on this podcast. I am so grateful to Anthony. He has an impressive bow of talents, and he's someone I will chat with more on this show. But for now, I hope you enjoy this chat. Hello and welcome to today's chat. You've heard my lengthy introduction about my next guest, Anthony. Anthony, welcome to the Rainbow Pod.
Hi, Murray. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Now, as my introduction sort of covered, you're a man of many layers. But today, the reason why I've invited you on the show is you are a donor dad.
Yes, that's correct.
And so is saying donor dad the correct term? Because as we're about to unpack, you're not actually a dad in terms of you don't have you're not the everyday dad for this child.
Yeah, I mean, you can think about the term fathering in all sorts of ways, but donor dad is the term that we've used with my donor daughter's mothers. And that was just that's how they refer to me. She refers to me as my donor dad.
Okay. And she actually says donor dad.
She says donor dad.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So just before we get into it, what is a donor dad?
Well, it's a good question because I didn't know the actual specifics to what that actually means. But essentially, you're a donor. And if you think about donating blood or donating a coin, once you hand that item over, that's no longer your property. It's no longer yours. Right. You've handed it over as a donation. It's now the property of the person who receives that item. So the same is the deal with sperm, and which basically means that there are no responsibilities and no rights to the child or any sort of parenting discussions or negotiations. You're literally a donor handing sperm over.
Got you. So that is a really fascinating way to think of it, because when you think of donating blood, or like you said, or you're donating money, once you've handed that over, you've donated it, and it's up to whatever they do with that money or do with that blood. You're then out of the picture. So, and we will unpack that during this episode. But take me back. How long ago was it? What was happening in your life that you woke up one day and said, I want to become a donor dad. I would assume that I would suspect that you didn't say I want to be a donor dad. You want to donate your sperm. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. And I never actually thought of myself as being an active dad and having children who I would parent in an active way in
Right.
a family type setting. And, but it was largely around when I came out to my family and I started to experience a lot of biphobia or queer phobia. And then it was sort of the marriage equality debate was starting to heat up. I think it was just before a particular election where
So how long ago was it?
I think what was the election before the one that was sort of around the marriage equality? So probably around 2014, 15, around that time. I and working, I guess, for a queer org as well, I was very much connecting with queer community and becoming more and more increasingly aware of the discrimination for queer people who are trying to be parents and have families.
Right.
And so I thought, screw it, I want to contribute and try and make access to family living and parenting for queer people a little bit easier. So I found a website. So I thought then I want to donate my sperm. It's an easy thing to do. I mean, is this a PG?
No.
Because look,
I think I know where
I just thought,
going to take.
I just thought, look, I jerk off all the time. I may as well make this more meaningful than it is in the moment. And so
Let's make this one count.
let's make this one count. So I thought, no, but seriously, I did it for kind of political reasons, but also because I like the idea of supporting queer people who are wanting to have children, wanting to have a family.
Love it.
And so
When you say queer people, you mean
I was thinking a lesbian couple, but I was not just exclusive to that type of queer relationship either, but just queer people who were needing some help and needed sperm.
Right.
So I went on the it was called the Free Sperm Donation website. It's an old website. I don't even think it's around anymore. It could be.
We'll probably bleep that out.
But I
But you went onto a website.
I went into a website and I created a profile. And in my description of my profile, I said, because it asks you all sorts of things about your physical characteristics and history of illness. And it's quite exposing, actually. I had to actually ask my mum for a few things and so you kind of really put yourself out there. But in my description, I said, I'm doing this only for queer people.
Love that.
This sperm, I want to donate only for people who are, queer or lesbian and need some support. And I said something like, no offense to people who don't fit, who don't come under that description. And I remember receiving one email from someone who said, this is like reverse discrimination. And I said, oh, well, I hope that let that settle in. Let that settle in. Let the discrimination settle in. Just call it what you want, but let it settle in. So, and I was in a bit of a, fuck you mode.
So is this a legit website? Or is it sort of like a proper company or a proper group or whatever? Or is it like a Facebook group or somebody that has set this up?
No, it was a proper website, but I don't think it was regulated it didn't seem like anything too sort of overly official. It seemed to be kind of like a bit of a sort of Facebook-ish social media kind of type of space. And I actually had one lesbian couple who were from out sort of far south, eastern suburbs, who contacted me and they said, look, we just saw your profile. Do you mind if we meet? We're interested in your profile. We want you to tell us more about your intentions and those sorts of things. And so I caught up with them for coffee in St Kilda. I was living in St Kilda at the time. A lovely couple. After our first meeting, they said they wanted to proceed and keep talking. But it was sort of, I remember it was over Christmas or something, and then they went away and then I wasn't available. And then
what kind of things do you think that they were sussing out about you?
Mostly my intentions.
Yeah.
And I think that the couple that I went with, we ended up having a daughter with, they were also, I think, trying to suss out my intentions as well.
Sure. About whether you would want to become more of an active dad.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What sort of involvement I want, what were my expectations. And also with the donor daughters' mothers, they also wanted to know how available I could be to them. They wanted to make sure that I was interested in being accessible in some capacity, because they already have a donor son, a son that they received a sperm donation for. And
through that same means, through the website and all the...
I'm not sure if it's through the same means, but the donor dad of that child went back to the States. And so he left Australia. He's really disconnected from them. And they saw that it actually had some sort of impact on their son.
Right.
Not a overly dramatic or distressing one, but it was just like this is, so that idea is gone, that this person that may be around in his life where he can join some dots, he can have conversations with him in the future. And so they explained that to me, and I said, absolutely.
So the father was gone even when you came into the picture?
He was gone.
Oh, okay.
When they were going through the process to find a donor to have their second child.
Mm-hmm.
But just with that first couple, I was going to say, we sort of got disconnected over Christmas and stuff, and then I had sent them a message. I sent one of them a message and said, hey, are you still interested? I mean, cool if you're not, but just we were lost. And they said, we've separated.
Oh.
So I thought, okay, so I just sort of waited again after that.
Yeah.
And then the donor daughter's mothers sort of showed up, and then we proceeded in that.
There was another couple that contacted you?
It was the second couple.
Couple. So you only met with two people, two couples.
Yeah.
The first ones fell through because they broke up.
Yes.
But it was you got a lot from that because you got to understand the questions and the things that they would kind of be sussing out. Then the second couple, which you were successful with having a child with, tell me about that meeting.
Again, they came to St Kilda. They were nervous. I was nervous. It was kind of like some strange date.
Yes. We'll actually get to the date in a moment, won't we?
Well, do you know the funny thing was I hope I could say this out loud now, but I think it was a Saturday morning, and the night before I'd spent the entire night at the Peel with my friends Jay and Avi. Hi guys, and we had a massive night as we always did at Peel. It's awful, a trashy, messy night. Macca's on the way home. And then I just remember saying, "Oh fuck, I've got to make a good impression. I've got to make." I felt like I was sort of being interviewed in a way, and so
which you took very seriously, obviously.
But anyway, we just hit it off. We started talking. I was very honoured. They said we're really interested in your reasons for only choosing queer people. That's what attracted us to your ad.
Mm-hmm.
So we're curious about that. How come? And we talked a bit more about that. And I said, no, I'm not interested in being an active parent.
Yep.
But I liked.
So just like the first couple, that was something that they were sussing out. Like
they wanted to know, and I was pretty. But I didn't completely. I remember it might have been after they said, "Would you be interested in being involved in some way, not in any active caregiving way, but just to remain in touch with us? And if she has questions, that we can get you on the phone. If she ever wants to ask you to." I said, absolutely, 100%, yes, absolutely. And so that all felt good. I think we met up again one more time, or we'd spoken on the phone, and we just talked a little bit more about, what the actual pragmatics of handing the donation over would be, because time is everything.
Okay.
Because I think there's about 20 minutes from when, and I could be wrong, your expert would need to speak to this, but there's about 20 minutes from once you put the sample inside the jar, once the sample finds its way into the jar.
Okay, well, what jar are we talking about?
Like a little, like the pathology.
Right, okay.
Like a urine sample goes in.
And then they take that out with a syringe or...
and then they sort of inseminate.
Yeah, but that's how you chose to do it.
Well, so that's doing it privately.
Okay.
With home insemination kit.
Yep.
And so it was.
And did they come with all that information to tell you, saying, we know how to do it, this is what you do, or did you know that yourself?
They did, and I knew that as well.
Right, okay. So you go and buy a kit, and then you ejaculate into the jar, and then they go and put it in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all incredible. It was the most bizarre experience.
Why?
And it was also done. So I just want to say the two mums, I won't use their names, but they were so incredibly respectful about the entire process. And so what would happen is that they, we'd organise to meet to do it on a Saturday. They'd get a hotel room in St Kilda fairly close by. They didn't want to put me out. I said, you can use my place. I'll just wander down to Ackland Street and have a coffee.
I jack off all the time in there.
Yes. I don't think they want to know that, but.
No.
I think we did it once or twice at my house, and then they had a hotel room in St Kilda, and then we met in the lobby, They said everything's ready for you upstairs. Just come down when you're done.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure. I know there's 2 lesbian women waiting downstairs for me to finish jerking off. They want my sperm.
And that's assuming that it happens the first time round, because how many times did it take?
Well, I think we did it over about 12 months, and we're about 6 times over 12 months.
6 times over 12. So the first time they rented a hotel and everything was lovely and all the rest of it. By the 4th time, they were like hurry up,
leaving the horn. It's like, hurry up. So it was, I never knew how the volume of sperm, is that the right term? The amount of
that's
sperm
needed.
I just didn't realize how it was. I felt almost embarrassed handing over this sample jar with, I thought I would have filled it up.
The jar.
It's just not, it didn't seem like there was a lot in there. And I'd almost hand it over apologetically. I remember at the start, I'd be apologizing. I'm sorry, was that enough? Is that? It was so, they were so beautiful because at one point they said to me,
They probably had no idea.
well, they were very well researched, and they said, look, just be sure that you're not consuming any alcohol 24 hours before. And also, just drink lots of water in the week leading up to it, lots of water. And they were being so nice. And so I was doing all that. Anyway, handing the jar over, they'd do what they needed to do, and then would say, okay, see you later, good luck, let me know. And then
So there was 5 times of them telling you it's failed, it's not worked, whatever. And then the 6th time.
Well, it was about 6 times, I think. Could be less, a little, maybe 5 or 6. Anyway, and it was actually, there's a lot of hope that goes into waiting.
For sure.
And, and I think that it's very emotional, the journey. And I also felt like I was sort of letting him down a little bit. I thought, they've got themselves a dud here. You can't is it my sperm? Or even though I had my sperm tested and all the results came back, it was all in the good range. And then they said, look, we've been thinking about this and we're going to go through IVF. Would you be willing to come through the IVF process now, which really formalizes the whole process? I mean, we're getting into legalities now. We're signing contracts.
And did they do that because they thought it wasn't going to work with the home insemination?
Yes.
Yeah. And so they were starting to explore other options?
Yes. They want to increase the chances of being more successful.
Right. And did you get to that?
We got to that.
Oh, okay. It got
First
to that.
go, bang. And
No. So how many times did it fail with the home insemination that you then moved on to the IVF?
Again, 5 or 6.
5 or 6, yes. Right.
So it was after. So that was a 12-month period.
Gotcha.
And then afterwards they said to me, look, we're going to go through IVF.
And so I'm curious to know, in that 12 months, you're then getting to know each other, your faces are becoming more familiar, you're going on an emotional journey. It's not working out in terms of, they're not getting pregnant, but that bond between you, I'd imagine, is getting closer or more familiar. Did anything shift in your head that made you think, maybe I do want to be a little bit more involved than what I've said, but I won't say it because that might scare them off. Did any of that kind of stuff come into your head?
Not really. I did. The thing I remember mostly during that time is I really want to let them know that I'm not going to be worn out by this and I'll keep going until they want me to stop.
Right.
I just remember that they were a bit anxious about that.
Right.
And then they were a bit anxious about asking me to go through IVF because, again, it sort of increases the level of commitment that's required. And I just said to them, unless you want me to stop and bugger off, I'm going to go with all the way because I really want to do this for you. And so that, I think, gave them some comfort, but it didn't really sort of kind of activate some kind of innate sense that I wanted to actually be an active dad,
right?
Any more than I had ever imagined before that. Anyway, I thought, it might be nice to do that, but not really on the priority list.
Yeah. And so, okay, so then fast forward to them getting pregnant. Take me back to them calling you or texting you, or I hope they called you to say that we're pregnant.
They told me there was the first round of IVF, which is good because as a couples therapist, I see when I've worked with people who have come for couples therapy who are going through or have been through an IVF process, it's very costly emotionally, financially.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I think it was the first round they got pregnant, which is good. Can I just say, walking into the IVF clinic, And again, it's all very respectful, and here's the equipment you need. There's a room in there. There's the box of tissues. There are the videos or whatever. And it was all straight porn. Now, I'm fine. I'm fine with straight porn. But I went in there and I said to the lady at reception, how many gay men do you know that would come in here to donate sperm? She goes, we'd get a few.
For sure.
You might want to think about putting some gay porn in there. I'm like, I can't be the first person to have said that, surely.
Well, what was the response?
I don't know. I think she nodded and agreed or something like that. But I just thought, surely they've had this feedback before.
I would imagine, though, that nowadays people would just go in there and whip out their phone anyway and watch it on their phone, right? But I'm curious, though, because they went through this the private way. They looked on this website and all the rest of it. There are legit services set up. You can go to companies, can't you? Like where you find where you get a sperm donation, and you can it can be a known donor or a private donor.
Yes, I think a lot of the IVF places,
Yes.
Monash
Yeah.
and Melbourne IVF.
Yeah, which leads me to, why wouldn't they have done that the first time around? Was it a cost thing, do you think?
I think because it's the known donor.
Yeah.
And the fact that they knew that I was happy to be more sort of actively accessed by them as needed.
Which is what they wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think because I think that sort of donors in the, I guess, traditional sense as a donor, I think that the child can make a request once they're 16 or 18 for the agency to contact the donor and to say, hey, this person's now...
My limited understanding, we'll probably talk about this post-show with an expert, but there's a known donor register and a private donor register. And depending on which one you go on is the access to the information that you have.
Right, but you have to update your details wherever you move in the world.
Right.
Your details need to be updated on that register. That's the agreement as well. They need to be able to contact you.
Yes.
You can't just jump off the radar.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you find out that they're pregnant, and they tell you that they're pregnant.
I was thrilled for them.
Yeah.
I was excited.
Your sperm did it.
My sperm did it. I felt like mission accomplished.
Yes.
And then I was just hoping that. And this is the interesting thing, because as a donor, I mean, it's hard. As a person, I'm invested. I want what's best for them. But as a donor, I mean, there are all sorts of ethical and value judgments that can be made now in this space. Now, what do I care now? I can disengage, or am I invested now in the child being healthy, being a certain gender, being born under certain circumstances? So these are all the sorts of things that you sort of just kind of naturally start to think about. Of course, I want the baby to be healthy. So now I'm emotionally invested in how it's going.
Yep.
But I'm trying to keep that at bay, because I don't want... Last thing a couple of lesbians want is some queer bloke who's just given them their sperm.
Coming with I've bought the new pram. I've gone out and bought new clothes, guys.
Yeah. That's right. Right.
You have to contain it a little bit.
Well, I did, but not. I didn't feel like I was sort of being sort of misleading with keeping that to myself. It's just part of how I was respecting their boundaries as well.
Yeah.
It's not their... But we did have a counselling session. I think we had 2 counselling sessions with the IVF therapist as part of the process when you go to the agent through an agency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think I felt a bit more okay with saying, yeah, I really, I wouldn't mind to have a relationship with this child at some point if they wanted to. I'm not going to lose sleep over it if they don't. But I just had this room to sort of sail that. And I think that's really important, to be able to not to push that stuff down.
Yeah.
But just to sort of get it out and talk about it, and also to understand the legal and the realistic setup of what's been agreed upon. And what I might do if I notice this longing for a child or for contact, how I might manage that, what supports I have in my own private life to manage that.
But vice versa as well, Anthony. The child, may grow up and say, I want more of a connection with... you may say donor dad, and they may say donor dad, but the reality is that the child could view that differently and see you as the dad and say, I want a relationship with my dad. Well, that is a risk.
Probably, and it's a very welcomed thing. But, I mean, they have Father's Days at kinder and primary schools, and she's got 2 mums. And
Yeah.
so I imagine that she would be thinking about, a dad. Does she have one? And they don't. Their family is actually really, when I did some work at Ben TV, and we actually went out and interviewed them and spoke to them about being parents who received a donation. And so I've got to visit them at their home and interview them on Queer Community TV, but also to remain in touch with them. And there is, Harriet has,
No, we can beep that.
Okay.
Don't worry. Yeah.
and the donor daughter has asked at times about me, and the mums do keep me involved in sort of how she's going.
So what do they say?
They'll say things like, "Where does curly hair come from? Because I don't have curly hair." And I said, "Yeah." And then they said, You didn't look like you had curly hair." I said, "I don't look like I have any hair."
Yeah.
But so little things like that. And I remember once.
But what do they say if the child says to their mums, and we're trying to avoid saying her name, but if she says to the mums, "Who's my dad? Do I have a dad?" Do you know what their response is?
They will say, "Anthony is your donor dad."
Right. Okay.
And they'll talk a little bit about how, I don't know specifically how they talk about how the donor daughter was conceived and that sort of thing.
There's lots of really good books and stuff like that as well.
I've heard of this really lovely way of describing it to kids, how, your mummies or your daddies or your mummy and daddy had a special hug, and then and then you were in the mummy's tummy.
Oh, that's
or
cute.
the parents' tummy.
That's cute. Yeah. But it sounds like things have been negotiated well, and worst case scenarios have not occurred, and there would be instances where things can go wrong. Do you know much about? I'm curious to know. We might talk about this post episode with an expert. But what happens if the child is conceived and then you're hit up for child support? Can that happen?
I don't think so. Again,
No.
I'm not a legal person, but if it's gone through an agency where it's gone through that formal process.
But it only went through that formal process because they couldn't get pregnant, right? It was only after 6 months. Before that, it was an informal arrangement.
It was, but even still, I think that we did write something up, and it was almost like a handshake agreement, but there was something written up in good faith. So that could be that, not that that's legally binding, but it could demonstrate to the court that there's a goodwill process where we agreed on this, and I think that would have some standing. But I don't know, but I would be very surprised if any donor was hit up for child support. I mean, it would just make it very unattractive for so many people to donate, and I don't think that's fair either.
No, you're right. So you've now, since having that donor child, you've gone on to have 2 beautiful children in your own right, and going back to, when you said you were really plugged into your queer identity, and, it was a bit of an FU, and you wanted to help 2 women have a baby, or 2 queer people have a baby, but you did say you didn't think that you were going to become a father. You then went on to have 2 children of your own. Did that process of having 2 children and becoming a father in your own right make you reflect, or did you have any reflection on that donor process, or did anything shift in your head? I'm just curious.
It made me think more about how important it would be for our donor daughter.
Yeah.
And it made me also reflect on her older brother, whose donor dad is not around.
Mm-hmm.
How, and I mean, this is a kid, these kids are growing up in a loving family. They got great parents and they're really thriving.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me think about some of the questions kids might have, and some of the relationships that they might even sort of imagine and think about.
Yeah.
And to not have that available to them,
Yes.
I think would be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So I think that it's very different being a donor dad compared to being an active.
No days off.
No days off, But our donor daughter and my kids, or my older kid Ari, they've video called a couple of times. They've met in person.
Wow. Okay. So what do your 2 children know about your donor child?
Well, Ari is now 5,
Right.
so I can have more, specific conversations about that now. Just known as our friends,
Okay.
the mums' names, and also our donor daughter, and just using their names.
Right.
So we haven't necessarily referred to them as family. It's not something I've talked to the mums about how do we.
Well, what prompted the meeting?
Well, I mean, we stay in touch.
Right.
We send each other, like I sent the mums a Mother's Day text, and they sent photos of her.
Oh.
And so we're remaining in touch, and there might be some random. We've had like a couple of random calls about, she's been saying this, or you've got Greek heritage. Can you got any of your mums sort of recipes and homemade sort of recipes that we can make some Greek food for her so that she knows some of that part of her.
So the idea on their end is they want to make their daughter's world complete, and that's a piece of the jigsaw, and that piece is always available by having contact with you.
Yes.
Which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, it is. And at the start, it was largely facilitated by them, the contact. Like I'd just be in responder mode. But now I'd initiate some things too. Hey, thinking of you. And I send them pictures of Ari and Leo and stuff. So it's nice. It's kind of like it's a very sort of friendly. The word family, I think I would say we're a rainbow family, and I think they would probably use that term as well.
For sure.
But it's not one, and they live, nearly 2 hours away from us anyway, but it's a term that I like that queer community have been able to deconstruct the traditional notion of what family means.
Yes.
And for us to be able to structure up families or family structures in a way that makes sense to queer people, because we can come together to have children and make families in our own way. We need extra support. There needs to be other interventions and ways that allow children to be in same-gender relationships. So it sort of broadens this way of who's included in the family experience.
Sure.
I love that. I love that.
So do I. And I'm curious, if what is something that you wish somebody told you or warned you about or gave you advice about before you went into this process or during the process that you only know on reflection?
Drink lots of water.
Right. Don't go to the peel.
Peel the night before. And also really commit to the counselling process that's offered. And if you don't go through an agency, I think contact an IVF therapist or someone or a therapist who's been involved in these processes, because I think the questions that were asked of me in those sessions, I felt like that's just my private stuff.
Yeah.
If I do have a yearning for parenthood, I need to really keep that away from this couple. It's not their problem. I don't want to do that to them. But they actually, for them, it was like it helps for us to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Bring it to the surface. Let's chat about it, discuss it.
Because of course, they're thinking, of course there'd be some.
Otherwise, why would you sign up?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so that helped to, sort of, I don't know if it settled it, because I didn't think it needed necessarily to be settled, but to name it out loud felt good. It's like, okay, we can, the honesty felt good, and it was okay to be honest about that. It didn't feel threatening to them. And it didn't feel like it sort of got something going in me where I'd be sort of camping out the front of their house trying to get to see them. You know what I mean?
Has she arrived yet? Has she arrived? Did you get involved in any of that stuff, like the baby shower? Did they do a baby shower and all of this kind of stuff?
I didn't get involved in that, but I did go to their wedding.
Oh, okay.
And I
Is this post-child or before?
Post-child.
Post-child, okay.
And she was very cute on the wedding day, and their family was just so grateful. They are. And look, there's a queer, as you know, Murray, queer weddings bring so many people together, and there's a little bit of hint of homophobia in the air as well, because some people coming along, family members who, I love you, but I'm against it, and so like
or they're telling you how for it they are.
Yeah,
I just want to let you know I'm fully supportive.
Yeah. Those drunken conversations out on the balcony in the smoking area.
Fuck off.
But the same was the case at their wedding, and I think that one of the
the hint of homophobia.
Well, I just knew, because I'd heard about some family stuff, but I think one of the things I was most worried about is the judgment and the criticisms that people generally, straight people, have of queer people with children. And this is one of the things about marching with you and the Rainbow Dads at Pride, walking down Fitzroy Street, celebrating parenthood as queer people.
Yeah.
There's just no way that could have happened, go back 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago. There's just no way that they would see us as people that can be around children with all the negative judgments and stereotypes. So
Interesting.
so I that's the thing that can really roll me up, and I didn't want to be at a wedding.
And that was your fuck you, that you were speaking of.
Well, that was the fuck you, and also I didn't want to be at this wedding wrestling someone to the ground in the smoking area. if I got a sense that they had something to say about queer parents. But their family was so grateful for me. They said, they were asking me lots of questions, and they were really treating me as one of the family. It was so great.
That's so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad that everything has worked out, and you're an example of anyone that's listening to this. I guess anyone that's listening to this episode that's thinking, oh, maybe I might want to become a donor dad. The takeaway message that is do it for the right reasons.
I think whatever your reason is probably the right reason for you, but I think I would say do it. I think about the structural disadvantages for queer people into parenthood and to family living in a way that queer people can't do just on their own. I think get in there, do it, offer something. I think it's a lovely altruistic thing to do. If you are interested in being a more active parent, I know of queer people, a lesbian couple and a gay male couple who got together and they had children very deliberately so that they all can be involved as active parents. And there's sort of two sets of parents who are very much involved in that child's life. So I think there's lots of possibilities.
Yes.
And
the reason why I say that, Anthony, is because I've heard many, many times people say to me, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to, I would like to become a father, but I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. They may not have a partner, it's cost prohibitive or whatever. So then they say, so I may as well give my sperm and make it useful for somebody else. I would imagine that notion or that idea, as goodwill as it is tinged or fraught with potential issues. Because through that you're kind of exposing, I want to be a dad.
I think that if there's any background experiences of family abandonment or a loss of community or connection to family, if there's a sense of deep loss about family, your experience with caregivers or anything like that, I think if you're going in to be a donor dad, and you are harboring this desire, this longing for a parent-child relationship again, even if you're at the other end as the parent-caregiver, and you're connecting with people who just really want the donation, you need to really back off, I think, and just be careful with that. There's nothing wrong with harboring that desire and having that wish to be connected to the parent-child relationship in that way. But I don't think it's fair to make it the problem of people who really just want a donation.
For sure.
And so that's why that counselling process is really important. It really helps to tease out some of that stuff and to support you to make a more informed choice.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. That was a great chat. And we will have, after this episode, we will have a post-chat with an expert that can kind of unpack the other things that may have come up during that chat. But thank you so much for coming on Over the Rainbow.
Thanks, Murray. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.